Book 1, Chapter 1. The halls of Castle Ironfist lay shrouded in sorrow. King Morglin Ironfist, unifier of Enroth, had died peacefully in his sleep. And yet nothing within the keep felt peaceful. Servants whispered under tapestries to muffle their grief. Knights removed their helms in the corridors and stood a little straighter when his name was spoken. Even the sea winds that usually battered the western towers seemed to hold their breath. Beneath that hush, another current moved, quicker, sharper, and cold as a drawn blade. Archabald Ironfist crossed the great hall like a thunderhead. He wore black without ornament. The only light upon him came from the static that clung to his fingers when he flexed them. Features were cut fine and severe, the sort of handsomeness that felt like a reprimand. Visiting emissaries offering condolences bowed as he passed. Archibald's eyes were always reading, always planning. He gave orders without raising his voice, and people obeyed out of fear. Roland Ironfist stood in the colonnade beyond the hall, watching sailors' pennants stride along the cliffside road. He wore the same black as his brother. His shoulders were broad, his sword belt plain. He had the confident bearing of a commander and an unmistakable softness. They were the greatest work of a great king. And to understand why their father's death peeled the lid from a nation, one must remember who Morglin Ironfist had been. The age before the crown. A generation earlier, Enroth had no king. The throne was legend, and the law was a patchwork of whatever leader ruled its region. 3 warlords fought like wolves over a carcass. Lord Slayer, a barbarian chieftain whose ogres shook the northern plains. Queen Lamanda, a sorceress whose coastal cities glimmered with illusions and silver fleets. And Lord Alamar, a warlock who raised jackal-headed banners over the mountainside and cursed the sun. Morglin Ironfist was not born to rule them. He was a foreigner who rallied mankind. A man who had dragged a line of starving soldiers through a war-torn land others declared unbeatable. He had no claim, just courage. Legends disagree on how he found the Eye of Goros. Some whisper he followed a star for 9 nights through a desert that moved when you blinked. Others claim he wrested it from a dragon so old that it had forgotten its own name. Whatever the truth, he returned from his wandering with a crystalline sphere the size of a clenched fist, veined with light like lightning trapped in glass. The eye was not a weapon in the crude sense. It did not spit fire or shatter walls. It saw, it revealed, and natives claimed it could heal the wounded land. Future and even see the hearts and thoughts of others. The eye made every court its own illumination. But now, those who wish to rule the lands have gathered. Slayer came first, bare arms corded, bearskin hanging wet with old victories, an axe that looked stolen from a door frame to a god's house, the leader of the barbarian horde who hailed from the savage plains. Lamanda arrived behind a curtain of rain she'd brought with her, pearls of water orbiting her wrists like tame moons, the leader of druids and sorcerers of the forest. Alamar glided in last, robed the color of a midnight bargain, smile thin as a knife you don't notice until it's already in you. The leader of the beast folk, lord of the mountain. Morglin Ironfist walked out of the wind in chain and leather, a soldier's king, the eye of Goros set into the pommel of his sword so the artifact's cold star looked back at all 3 of them without blinking. Slayer answered with his axe, a blur of iron big enough to cleave a behemoth. The parley shattered. Barbarians howled and rushed. Lamanda's storm answered with a shriek of blue-white spears. Alamar's warlocks loosed manticores that bounded across the plain with deranged grace. Morglin's tightened into a wall, a shield line. The first barbarians hit and stuck. Morglin stepped into the opening Slayer made for him, caught the axe on the rim of his buckler, and drove. The eye brightened. The sword seemed to cry at the touch of the barbarian's blood. Slayer's axe fell with its hilt split. Slayer laughed, delighted. "You really are strong," he said, and headbutted in an attempt to create distance. Morglin twisted, bashed the bearskin ribs with the boss of his shield, then shoved him away into the teeth of a stray frost spike Lamanda sent. Slayer spat blood and grinned wider. "Good," he said, "good." Above them, Lamanda's storm split into 100 ice spikes hunting warm bodies. Alamar clapped once, and a skin of shadow settled over him. The spikes melted on contact as if clashing with the sun. "My queen," he called sweetly. Surely you know more than one spell. I only need one to defeat you, Lamanda replied, and melted ice spikes reformed into acid, hissing down through barbarian hair and warlock beasts alike. Slayer came back with a spare axe and a laugh. Again! He hurled the weapon and sprinted after it. Morglan cut the axe aside as it flew toward him and met the man with his knee. Slayer howled approval. This is how real warriors speak, he said, and swung high for a killing stroke. No, Morglan answered, and cut low. Tendon parted. Slayer's leg betrayed him. He stumbled, caught himself on rage, and still came on. Morglan shattered his shield into Slayer's jaw. Teeth went like hail. Finally, the barbarian dropped to one knee and coughed blood. Morglan drove the eyelet sword straight through the barbarian's huge back, piercing his spine. Heatless white flashed. The breath left Slayer in a single baffled exhalation. He grabbed Morglan's gorget and tried to laugh again, but only blood came. Stay down, Morglan told him. The rein twisted into a whip and cracked. Lamanda stalked forward, eyes full of lightning, veil clinging to her like fog that had chosen a favorite. Kneel, she said, and the word came with the weight of a squall. Morglan felt the order try his bones. He took a step, then another, until he stood directly in her weather. As soon as he felt a break in her seemingly unending storm, he made his move. She raised both palms to call new fury. Morglan lunged and raked his blade across her scepter. The jeweled rod parted like bread. For the first time, she appeared surprised when his blade came for a second swing and slashed across her throat. Ah, Alamar sighed, finally amused. We arrive at the real confrontation. He lifted two fingers. The earth behind Morglan opened. A spectral dragon dragged itself through on elbows, laughing in a voice that made teeth want to loosen. Destroy him, Alamar said, as if ordering tea. Morglan didn't look back. He called to the eye. Show me where the tether is. The stone burned cold. The dragon's chain glowed through the world. Red, tight, and leading straight to Alamar's left hand, where a ring the color of forbidden gems gleamed. Morglan threw his sword, not at the dragon, but at the warlock. Alamar blinked, insulted, and lifted a ward. The blade struck the spell and stuck, thrumming. Morglan was already moving. He hit the hilt with his shoulder, breaking it in exchange, and shoved the trapped sword through the ward like a nail through soft wood. Metal-kissed ring, the tether snapped. The dragon shrieked as if disappointed in his futile arrival, and collapsed into ash of the battlefield. Alamar's smile flattened. Rude, he said. 4 black serpents of force uncoiled from his sleeves and struck. Morglan caught 2 with his pauldrons, and a third skid across the hauberk's rings, and took the 4th in his left forearm, so his right hand stayed free. Pain seared deep into his bones, but he tried his best to resist it. Swear, Alamar said, voice silk over steel. I don't need your death, but right now it seems very tempting. Morglan flicked his eyes toward Slayer and Lamanda's bodies. Then he recomposed himself, because the only thing saving him from Alamar right now is his pride. Morglan rushed, fighting the pain. Alamar stepped back onto a sigil he'd drawn earlier with sacrificial blood. The ground lifted to cup him like a throne. Come then, the warlock whispered, and the air thickened with transparent barbs. Spells curdled, the barbs fell like dead bees. Morglan's sword went for the throat. Alamar parried with a blade he drew from his sleeve. They traded strikes and blocks. You fight like a cornered pest, Morglan said, binding his blade and sliding close. And you cry like a motherless cur, Alamar murmured, with a spectral blade aiming for the Ironfist's heart. Morglan let the thrust slide under his arm, pinned Alamar's wrist against his own cuirass, and smashed his forehead into the warlock's nose. Cartilage broke, mimicking the sound of an expensive sound of a vase crashing. Alamar reeled. Morglan kicked the throne sigil sideways, breaking the barrier around Alamar. The magic blew out with a wail. He set his sword's point at Alamar's throat. On your knees, Morglan said. Never, Alamar cried. Morglan swung and Alamar caught the blade in his hand. Blood dripped and began to evaporate as the sword began to glow red with heat, causing Morglan to drop the blade, disarming him. Disarmed, off balance. Now the warlock breathed, blood bright on his lips. Alamar's blade came up in a smooth, killing arc. The rain began to intensify with each gathering moment. Something moved in the rain behind him. Lamanda stood there, alive, veil torn, blood bright at a cut that had never been as deep as it looked. She had crawled free of her own storm when it collapsed, cold and furious, and now she held Morglen's sword two-handed like an ecstatic executiner. Alamar began to turn. Lamanda's cut was clean and unanswerable. The eye flared once as the blade took flesh, releasing Alamar's head from his spine. For half a heartbeat, his face kept the shape of a smile, as if he meant to finish his sentence. Then it fell. The body knelt and tipped forward. The mountain throne went dark. Wind held its breath. Crows hovered, wing beats heavy. Morglen blinked at Lamanda, then stared after the unexpected turn of events. His soldiers froze mid-step. Even the surviving barbarians refused to step. She looked at him over the blade she'd just used to end the most dangerous man on the field. For an instant, her eyes were all storm. "Will you finish it?" Morglen asked, plain as iron. He did not reach for a knife. He didn't have one anymore. Lamanda's grip tightened. She could have cut. She let the moment taste itself and then offered him the sword. "Stand," she said. "You'll have your eastern lands. I'll take the forests. A queen of sorcery is better among trees than men." "We've been trying to kill each other for months," Morglen said, taking the hilt. "You expect trust?" "I expect work," she answered. "Yours is roads and bread and oats. Mine is nature, magics, and keeping idiots with bones for brains out of the groves. We divide the ache and the glory, or we go on until nobody gets either." Morglen weighed her, weighed the field, weighed the taste in his own mouth. He nodded once. "Then peace," he said. "Thank you for saving me." She smiled for the first time, small and real. "Then build your east, King Ironfist. I'll keep the green places from burning." They clasped wrists, the eye's cold star between them like a witness. Around them, barbarians lowered axes, sorceresses killed their spells, warlocks looked down at Alamar's head in the mud and lost their wit. The vultures waited above. In the years that followed, they were allies, not always gentle, always honest. Lamanda raised a sorceress kingdom beneath heavy boughs where nature answered her. Morglen made the eastern roads run straight and the granaries fat. He sent food when it was pinched. She sent storms when fires ran. They met each winter on the border stones to argue, laugh, and trade oaths. And when the necromancers came up from the mire, hungry for death and lands both, Lamanda took the field alone so his Enroth would not fall. She died in a ring of rain, standing, eyes full of lightning and trapping the dead in the mire. Morglen buried her under a hill of oak roots in a druid circle, the Ironfist line. In the private ledger of his heart, Morglen counted his sons both as blessings and as worries. Archabald was his greatest mystery. The boy read before he was 3 and cast his first candle flame at 5. Tutors complained that he corrected them. He adored systems and abhorred ambiguity. When a schoolmate bloodied him in a training yard brawl, Archabald mastered the boy's schedule, stole his breakfast every 3rd morning, and arranged to return the bruises 2 months later in a hallway where no one would interfere. "You are intelligent," Morglen had told him when he found out, "but are unwilling to forgive." And Archabald looked away, because he valued admiration, but the only person who could make him feel small was his father. Roland arrived different. He was a creature of motion and heat, always climbing a wall, always laughing in places and trying to loosen up the guards. He trained with the kingdom's best swordsmen until his body moved like a weapon itself. He could not bear to see a child harmed. He forgave because it felt good, and then learned to give because it was right. "You are good," Morglen told him when he carried a fevered dog to the castle healer and slept beside it on the floor. "But being unable to hide your goodness will make enemies take advantage of you." If the king had lived longer, perhaps his sons would have rubbed their differences into a set of virtues that could have ruled together. But kings are men, and men tend to return their borrowed bodies when the gods deem it time. The seers, the news traveled by bell. 6 rings for a lord, 20 for a queen, 30 for a king. The sound rolled over headlands and through alleys. Roland closed his father's eyes with a hand that did not tremble until after the chamber was empty. At noon, Archabald tracked the royal seers. He invited them to confirm the succession and to bless the crown that had warmed the kingdom during many winters. The senior seer, Mirradin, had a fisherman's habit of taking his little barge out at 8 a.m. every morning. Archabald found him there, drifting on a fishing boat, his white beard tucked into his belt to keep it from the hooks. "Your Highness," Mirrodin said, startled, when Archibald appeared behind him on his boat. "Mirrodin," Archibald breathed, and the politeness in his voice felt like a dagger pressed lightly to skin. "There is the question of the mandate of heaven." "The mandate," Mirrodin agreed, "was established by your father and the gods. I must consult the oracle. Bring your patience. Bring your humility. We'll do what must be done when the time comes." "Humility," Archibald repeated, as if trying out a foreign word. A spark crawled lazily between his fingers. "And if the mandate might not favor me?" "Then we will all kneel to your brother, it would seem," Mirrodin said. He did not flinch. "Then I can't risk your lies," Archibald whispered. The spark between Archibald's fingers turned into a bolt that soon found Mirrodin's breastbone with great force and kicked him backward. His robe smoked, his barge engulfed in flames as it sank slowly, being swallowed like a hair in a snake's mouth. The others died in ways less elegant and more dramatic. Frederick fell from a tower window 12 flights high. Robert was eaten after encountering a dragon appearing mysteriously at his countryside home. Johanna was discovered, smiling in her chair. Her heart was enlarged twice that of an ogre's fist due to poison. Archibald's hands were never seen in any of it, yet his will was everywhere. That evening he issued a proclamation from the western balcony, the one that looked down over the noble quarter where gulls like to quarrel over guts, and small boys like to gamble with shells. "My brother Roland, jealous of our father's favor, has murdered the royal seers to steal the crown for himself. He is a traitor to Enroth. I ask all loyal men to take up arms against him and return him to Castle Ironfist to stand trial." He did not shout. He did not need to. His voice carried, and the words nested in the rafters of taverns and in the corners of marketplaces where rumor breeds best. Men who had never met Roland nodded gravely because the document seemed true, and because Archibald had made disbelief feel treacherous. Wanted. Roland read the proclamation at dawn, in a guardroom that smelled sweat and wine. Lord Hart, a knight blessed with a handsome face and golden hair, watched his prince's face like he might watch a cliff for cracks before it fell. "I didn't do this," Roland said. It sounded childish even to him. "I know, Highness," Lord Hart said. "Your brother has the courts, the coffers, and the frightened with him." Roland set the parchment down and folded his hands around nothing until his knuckles creaked. "He thinks the mandate of heaven will pass me by because the seers are dead. He thinks if he crowns himself quickly enough." He smiled, just a little. "Your father, he was a choice this kingdom made. They will rally behind you when the time comes. We ride east before Archibald can close the gates behind us. We hold fast where the roads fork." They left under a sky that looked like iron waiting to be hammered, with 10 knights, 2 carts, and Tanir the court wizard who served as advisor and friend to Roland. They took the postern road that wrapped the cliff like a belt, and did not look back. The storm gathers. Archibald's reply to their flight was meticulous, almost loving in its design. He did not chase. He leaned on Coin, the one soldier that never sleeps. Remnants of the fallen nations who once opposed the Iron Fist's rise were coming out of hiding. And Archibald sent them coin and promises for their allegiance. By the time Roland reached the Dragon's Sands, patriots were already choosing. Some followed the Black Lion's banner because they wanted a leader who was strong. Others remembered Morglin's honor and fairness, and rallied to the man who fought with his father's patience, rather than a proclamation they thought untrue. Thunder rolled over Castle Ironfist as black clouds gathered above the sea. Drums answered the weather from the training yard. Archibald stood beneath the western balcony, hands folded, face like a statue that had learned to breathe. "Bring me my brother," he said, his voice to be heart by bounty hunters and mercenaries alike. "Bring me his sword." In the east, Roland tightened his gauntlets and watched dust rise where new allies rode to him across the plain. Farmers with pitchforks they'd cut down to make spears, free swords who craved to be heroes, quiet lords who had sat through too many councils with honest hearts biting their tongues. War on the horizon soon became obvious. The drums that had once celebrated for parades found their real purpose. The black lion banners and the blue lion banners were raised and began leaning forward. A nation that had chosen a king once would have to choose again, between brothers.